Hey guys, welcome back to the Lulu Blue Studio channel. If you are new here, my name is Luisa, and on this channel we like to paint mainly botanical subjects in watercolor. Today I have decided to create this tutorial where we are going to use a color palette a little bit unconventional for what I have showed you up until now. We are going to create a beautiful flower composition and very simple, and I'm going to explain you how to place the flowers on the page, where to add the leaves and how to add the leaves, and also more importantly I'm going to explain you how you can create different color values to create a flower composition that is engaging and beautiful to look at. Let me know in the comments below if you like this type of tutorial, but first, let's start painting. I start painting this flower composition from the main hero flower that I'm going to paint in the center of this page. And I mix on my color palette a little bit of Quinacridone Purple with a tiny bit of white gouache. This just to create a type of color that is a little bit more covering. I use my Da Vinci brush in size 10, this is a filbert brush, and I start to create the petals of the first main flower in the center of this page. The very first petal I've created is quite dark in color value. It means that I have mixed some Quinacridone Purple with a little bit of white gouache, and I use a very concentrated amount of pigment. Then I remove part of the pigment in the cup of water, and with a lighter value of this color I create the two side petals. With some more concentrated Quinacridone Purple on the tip of my brush, I add some strokes in the center part of this flower, just to allow through the wet on wet technique to have some darker purple to blend with the purple of the first layer. Then I mix on my color palette some Quinacridone Magenta with a touch of Quinacridone Purple that I have on my color palette, and I started to create some flowers in a similar way. With just the tip of this filbert brush, I add some more concentrated pigment, in this case Quinacridone Magenta, into the center part of this flower. And so one of the things that I wanted to highlight in this tutorial is how you can create beautiful flowers starting from lighter color values and then adding some more concentrated brush strokes with a more concentrated amount of pigment in some areas, like in the center of your flowers. So this is my recommendation for you, something that I encourage you to play with in this tutorial. As you can see, I keep creating these flowers with very light color values. You can create light color values just using a little amount of pigment. You can, for example, mix on your color palette a quite high amount of color mixture, and then you can remove what you have on your brush in the cup of water. Doing so, you'll be able to have different percentages of pigment onto your brush, and you'll be able to play with the wet on wet technique while you are creating the petals of these flowers. I always like to use this technique to create the first layer of my petals of my flowers, and then to add some more concentrated brush strokes in the center with a similar type of colors that I've used for the base. Clearly, you can use any other color that you want for your flowers. You can allow, for example, in the center of your flowers to have some contrasting colors compared to the base. But for this tutorial, we are keeping everything extremely simple, and we just use Quinacridone Purple and Quinacridone Magenta as our two main colors to use alone or mix with each other. To give a nice flow to this watercolor flower composition, I've created first the main hero flower in the center, and then all of the other flowers are in a position that are sort of framing the main flower in the center, and they are also smaller in size. Then I change my brush, I take my round brush in size 6 and I mix on my color palette a little bit of Viridian color from my Mary Blue with a little bit of Quinacridone Purple and a little bit of grey. The grey is Payne's grey. And with this type of color combination I started to create the leaves of this flower composition. In this case, I'm using this color mixture to start to create these leaves that are quite elongated in shape. I'm mainly creating them using different percentages of Viridian, a little bit of Payne's Grey, and I am mainly adding some pressure to the belly of this round brush and then releasing the pressure to create the tip of the leaves. I am adding these leaves in positions that are framing the whole composition of flowers that I've created up until this moment. And all of these leaves are quite big in size because I want to remove a part of the white page that is left in this moment. When I create these leaves, I use the same approach that I've used to create these flowers. And I start with a quite light color value of this color mixture, where I'm gonna add these brush strokes a little bit more concentrated of, for example, Viridian or a little bit more Payne's Grey to create leaves that have different colors but that are all part of the same color family. So some leaves have a little bit more Viridian compared to others, some leaves have a little bit more Payne's Grey, but they all belong more or less to the same color family. In this way, we're going to create a flower composition that is very nice to look at because we are not going to use too many colors, and we are going to create something that is going to be very nice for the eyes to put all together. If you like painting flower composition in these styles and you would like to improve your skills quickly, remember that you can always download for free the beginner's guide to watercolor flower painting. A watercolor guide that I wrote where I explain what are my favorite supplies to use, techniques, and I also explain you how to paint simple flowers, which is a very nice combination to have with this type of tutorials here on YouTube. So if you want to download the beginner's guide to watercolor flower painting, just click on the link in the description down below. And back to our video, I keep creating these leaves that are quite long in shape. Sometimes I leave some white spaces between the two parts that are creating the leaf, while sometimes I fill in the white space and I create these leaves all around these flowers that I've created, and sometimes I change the amount of pigments that I'm using, and sometimes I remove a part of the pigment in the cup of water in order to create leaves that are lighter in color value. In this way, having leaves and flowers that have different amounts of pigment on the page will help you to create compositions that are more interesting to look at because they are not all sort of flat compositions, but they bring some movement and character using different color values. And at this point, still with the same round brush in size 6, I started to create some other green elements, sort of leaves in this case, but I wanted to create some contrast, and therefore I create these leaves in smaller shape, so these are more of a round shape, and these leaves are created in a type of green where I added to the mixture of the other leaves a little bit of sap green. So I create a type of green that is a little bit more muted compared to the green of the first leaves, and also a little bit more concentrated. And this green is created adding to the mixture of green some sap green, but also a little bit of Quinacridone Purple. I added Quinacridone Purple because this is the main color that I've used to create the petals of the flowers, and therefore this type of color, this Quinacridone Purple, is going to create a sort of link between the green elements of the leaves and the purple and pink flowers of the center part of this composition. So what I want to achieve in this moment is to create some contrasting colors, some contrasting brush strokes into the floral composition I've created so far, with a color that is a little bit darker and that actually calls the eye of the observer because the shape of these elements is different, but also the kind of color is a little bit darker and more accentuated compared to all of the other colors of the composition. And I keep adding these round leaves where I have placed the longer leaves in first place. In this way, I will create a type of composition that is a little bit more cohesive and it doesn't spread too much all over the page. But this is up to you, and you can decide, for example, to create and add these smaller elements in other locations as well. When the first layer of all of the flowers is completely dry, I change my brush and I take my round brush in size 6 from Silver Black Velvet and I start to add the center of these flowers. In this case, I really wanted the center of these flowers to pop from the base, and therefore I've decided to use my transparent orange color to create the center of these floral elements. For this task, I like to use such a fine brush because I really want to create very fine lines in the center part of these flowers. But if you don't have such a type of brush, I encourage you to create the center of these flowers with any brush you have available, and just remembering not to add too much pressure to your brush and to the page in order to create these lines very fine in shape. When you are creating the center of these flowers, you can also, of course, mix other types of colors. For example, in this tutorial, I also started to mix to the transparent orange a little bit of Scarlet Red, just to give to some of these flowers slightly different color that was overall still quite similar to just the orange that I have given to the first flowers. For the first hero flower that we have painted, I have decided to add in the center a type of color a little bit more muted, and therefore I added to the color mixture of transparent orange and scarlet red a little bit of grey, just a little bit to create a darker type of center. And we are reaching the end of this tutorial. It was really nice for me to paint this one, and I really hope I was able to give you some nice tips to paint this type of floral compositions. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts, and also let me know if you painted along with me. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope to see you on the next one.